So the plan right now, tentative, I don't know, I might change my mind, is to make this part one of something I'm gonna call the Midsommar Odyssey. I was thinking of doing a part two where I talk about Midsommar proper and then talk about what actually happens at the film in case you're too afraid to watch it, and just other things that I really, really wanna delve deep into in regards to Midsommar. So let me know if you'd wanna see that. I will warn you right now, I'm very low on iron, my uterus is having a tantrum, and I have a cold. Achoo. If I seem kind of out of it, that's where I'm at right now. And if my voice sounds kind of funny, like more vocal fry than usual, that's why. Hello, it's Kendall here. If you're new around here, welcome. If you're not new around here, what is up, home skillet biscuit? Happy Saturday. Saturday is when I do a little something on my channel called Bad Movies and a B, the series on my channel where I talk about bad movies while putting my makeup on. But today we're not talking about a bad movie and I'm not doing my makeup. Today instead, I'm finally following through with something I said I was gonna do like a hot 4 to 6 months ago. If you've been following the channel, months ago I did a video talking about Midsommar and Hereditary, both directed by Ari Aster, and basically talked about how I feel like Hereditary is a little overhyped and Midsommar is the better movie between the two. That video incited a lot of debate. This is my channel, so I say what I want to say. But if you would like to watch that video, I'll link that up above so you can check that out. This week, we're following through on a promise that I made, again, 4 to 6 months ago, where I was talking about I want to do a second video that's solely about Midsommar. I'd say easily top 5 favorite horror movies, and yeah. So that's what we're gonna do today. As a movie, it's, you know, it's scary enough. It's more of a psychological thriller more than anything. I think the thing that frightens me more about Midsommar is kind of what it reflects back to us about our own society, especially in regards to idealizing ideas and structures of the past. And so there's a lot to unpack here, so I'm super excited about that. But before we do that, we have to hop over, we gotta pay some bills. So we're sending it over to Admiral Kennie. Ahoy. Why, hello there everyone, it's Admiral Kennie to let you know that today's video is sponsored by Likewise. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I am constantly tweeting about some new podcast, some new show, some new documentary that I found that has completely engrossed me, and I've had people say on multiple occasions, how are you finding these? Well, look no further. One thing that I do is I peruse Likewise regularly, especially when I'm bored and looking for something to watch. If you don't know what Likewise is, it is this app that allows you to put in what genres you like, what shows you already like, what movies, what books, what podcasts, what have you. As it learns more about you and what your interests are, it will recommend new forms of media that might be to your liking. And I have gotten some of the best recommendations off of Likewise. The most recent recommendation I got from Likewise is this podcast that I'm completely obsessed with right now. And it's called Behind the Bastards. It's a podcast that's about the secret lives of the worst, most awful people who have existed in history. I learned so many like obscure and really interesting facts from that podcast. Did you know that Saddam Hussein had a short-lived life as a smut romance novelist? It was a self-insert too, of course. Always the narcissist. Also, apparently Stalin, outside of being like murdering a bunch of people, he was also like this really annoying like prankster. He would play like practical jokes on all of his workers and then like joke about how he's gonna kill them because he might. Osama bin Laden was an otaku apparently. I learned so much. Likewise also recommended me to watch The Woman That Wasn't There, which I had heard about before, but I was reminded of it when I went on Likewise, which is about the woman who lied about being in the September 11 attacks. And she lied. She was going out of her way lying. She was coming up with whole new inventive ways to lie. For 6 years, she got away with lying. I need to make a video about stuff like this, like podcasts and documentaries, because I got loads. It's very, very fascinating, the stuff that's out there. So all you do is go on Likewise, make an account, let it know what general topics you're interested in. Me personally, I'm really big on documentaries, podcasts that have to do with just the more unsettling parts of the human psyche. I find it very fascinating. Shout outs to Capricorn season coming up. And it just sent me all of this stuff that I could use for endless hours of media consumption. So if you're ever bored, you don't know where to start, try out Likewise. They also have a community setting that allows you to see what other people are watching and they can give you recommendations. So it's a fun time. But I love the app. I use it all the time, even when I'm not sponsored. Like, I use it pretty often. If I see something new and I like it or dislike it, I let Likewise know, and then they keep generating new recommendations for me, and it's a great time. So if you would like to check out Likewise, it'll be linked down below in the description box so you can download it. Feel free to follow me on there too. I'm KennieJD there, like I am pretty much everywhere. Thanks again, Likewise, for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get on to the debauchery, baby. By the way, if you missed last week's video, we talked about Dear Evan Hansen. Oh my God. A remarkable feat of a movie to make something so bad in so many ways. Impressive, disturbing, just awful. It's a musical about a man who's like 45 playing a 17-year-old who lies about being best friends with a kid that killed himself in order to emotionally leech off of his grieving family. And it's a musical. Girl, if you want to check that out, it'll be linked up above, or you can check it out in the Bad Movies and a Beat playlist. So today, Midsommar. We have a lot on the docket. Talking about the movie itself, talking about just some of the very interesting and maybe controversial aspects of the movie, judging people, judging y'all. Midsommar is one of those movies where, depending on how you internalize and understand the ending, I feel like can tell you a lot about a person. And I will judge you based off of how you like feel at the end of the movie. Exciting. I'm a Capricorn. I love judging people. Anyway, so without further ado, this is Midsommar 2019. So I've gone back and forth about whether or not I want to unpack the theatrical cut or the director's cut. I think I prefer the theatrical cut. I feel like it's a lot cleaner, more concise, even though the movie is quite long, and it's the easier of the two to watch, so I'll be referring mostly to the theatrical. But if there's anything that I need to reference through the director's cut, I'll do that and just say that it's from the director's cut. Our main character is Danny, a fragile, generally anxious, severely traumatized psychology student, played by the very, very talented Florence Pugh. At the beginning of the movie, we can tell a few things about her personality very swiftly. She seems to be a bit anxious. She seems to be a little clingy, but it's all due to kind of some trauma that she has in regards to her family, particularly with her sister, who seems to be exhibiting some rather alarming behavior as of late. And one night her sister ends up committing a double murder suicide, killing both of their parents and then herself, leaving the already fragile and traumatized Danny even more so. Her rock, I say in quotations, is her boyfriend Christian, or Christian, depending on who says his name. Christian is a horrible boyfriend. He's terrible. He's not attentive. He's very detached. He seems to be overwhelmed and annoyed by her clinginess and her anxiety. And more specifically, he's a boyfriend that doesn't want to be her boyfriend. And that's something we learn very quickly. Like, he behaves like a person in a relationship who doesn't want to be in the relationship. He behaves like a person that's there out of obligation and not desire. And so when this incredible tragedy takes place, he doesn't want to leave the already very fragile Danny, because who wants to be the guy that breaks up with the girl who just lost her entire immediate family in this like incredible tragedy, you know what I mean? I'll talk more about Christian later towards the end of the video, because I do have some complicated feelings around Christian. He's dating someone who just went through an extreme tragedy. And he's kind of in a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing. Is it better to be the guy that broke up with the girl who lost her family in a double murder suicide? Or do you stay out of obligation in a relationship with someone that you don't really care about and behave as such, possibly hurting them more just because you feel like you don't want to be the asshole that broke up with the girl who lost her family in a double murder suicide? You know what I mean? Like, there is no right answer to that. Another thing that he's not very good at, outside of being a good boyfriend, is being a good PhD candidate. Apparently, him and his friends are all studying to be anthropologists, all of which don't seem to really want to be anthropologists. They're just doing it. The only friend of his that seems to be really interested in it is his one black friend named Josh. He's a very enthused, really passionate anthropologist, and Josh is looking to do his thesis on one of their mutual friends' hometown. This friend's name is Pelle, and he's Swedish, and he comes from a small commune in the Swedish countryside called the Harga. I'm so sorry. The Harga. I am sorry, Swedish people. Y'all are dope. I went there one time and everybody was so sweet. And so they, as a group of friends, decide to all go to the Swedish countryside together while Josh does his thesis and while Pelle, you know, visits his family for this big upcoming festival known as the Midsommar Festival. A trip that Christian does not tell Danny about. The scene where Danny finds out about the trip, at this point it's only 2 weeks away, is just so perfect. It's perfection. I love and hate that scene, as well as like the subsequent argument scene, if that's what I want to call it. Gaslighting scene is what it is. So much. I hate and love them both so much. They're just so triggering in a very specific way. One of the things that makes Christian so terrible is that he is a master at deflection and turning himself into a victim, even though you're the one who was the asshole here. Because they start to have a discussion, it wasn't even an argument at first, about why he didn't tell her about this trip that you're taking, that you're gonna be at for weeks. Somehow this conversation turns into, I'm sorry for making you, Christian, feel attacked. She starts to just try to get him to have a conversation with her. In the director's cut, it goes more into her kind of groveling and apologizing for her own paranoia. And again, it's just so triggering. Oh my God. Because the actual reason why he didn't tell her is because he had no plans on still being with her when this trip came up. But instead he's like, I wanted to surprise you. Come to this trip with me. That's more the director's cut. When he actually asks her to come to the trip, he's like, come to the trip with me. I was holding it off as a secret because I wanted to surprise you. And it's like, this guy. So yes, he invites her to come. He tells his friends, and that becomes incredibly awkward because it was supposed to be this kind of guy's trip, and also because they know that he doesn't want her to come. The only person that's more open to her coming to this trip is Pelle, the friend from Sweden. Speaking of Pelle is one of those people that make you not trust nice people. Like every movie I've ever seen with people who are too nice, I'm like, nah. But he tells Danny about the Midsommar Festival and how they're having like a special festival this year that happens, you know, only every once in a while. I think it's every 90 years, I think they said. They have all these activities and cool rituals. They crown somebody known as the May Queen. And so Danny comes to the trip, still reeling from her trauma associated with the death of her family, having panic attack cries in solitude most of the time. Seemingly supposed to be like an opportunity to get away, recenter, find yourself, all that jazz. They arrive at the village, meet some of Pelle's friends, one of which brought his own friends from his school in England, if I'm not mistaken. A biracial black dude and an Indian girl? I'm saying that as a question. We never get specificities on what their backgrounds are. I, for one, was staunchly aware of them being non-white. And I was like, oh, they not gonna make it. Josh ain't gonna make it. Any person of any color is not gonna make it out alive. Especially with all these skipping white people, absolutely not. But they've barely set foot on grass and they get really high on mushrooms. I don't think that's a great idea for a lot of reasons. One, Danny is super traumatized. And from what I hear, taking hallucinogenic drugs while in a very fragile emotional state, I don't think would be a good idea. Comment if you know more about that. Maybe I'm just speaking out my ass, I don't know, but that sounds like a bad idea to me. Can you imagine your trauma coming to life in a hallucination? Oh my God. And two, they don't know where they are. They just got here. Like, y'all haven't put stuff down. Y'all don't know where the bed's at. Y'all just high as a kite staring at the midnight sun. Danny and the crew are tripping balls, and the mere mention of family sends her into a tailspin. Like I said, probably not the best idea. But after passing out in the woods, it's time to meet some villagers. Nope. No ma'am. Absolutely not. Not my black ass. It is too many white people dressed in white, playing flutes and skipping merrily. I am no interest. Now, I would just like to go on record and say that midsummer, mid-autumn festivals are very common in many places around the world, and they are not inherently human sacrificial. If you get invited to a midsummer festival, odds are you won't be sacrificed to a cult But hey, I can't make no promises, but you know, generally speaking, you'll be fine. Here at this particular community, they have a special feast that takes place every 90 years, and they're there for this once in a lifetime opportunity to view that experience. There's one person in the village named Maya who seems to have a bit of a crush on Christian. And while she's setting her sights on Christian, Pele seems to be setting his sights on Danny. He's given her a gift for her birthday. The day that they land in Sweden was actually Danny's birthday, and Christian forgot. Of course he did. They're all just getting acclimated to the area, checking out things in the village. They have these giant runes. They have a bear in a cage for some reason, murals and tapestries everywhere. One tapestry mural tells us a story of a maiden who performed a love ritual by putting her period blood in his drink and putting her pubes in his food. Unfortunately, that's not just like a fun thing to know. That will come up later. So they're allowed into their quarters, which is going to be this big communal kind of farmhouse with beautiful murals all over the walls. We learn more about their practices around time and life cycles. Essentially, until you're 18, you are a child. From 18 to 36, you are to travel and experience the world. From 36 to 54, you are a worker. And then from 54 to 72, you are a mentor.
What happens at 72?
People love thinking that crazy people joking all the time, and that shit blows me. And they just let it go too. That's the other thing that get me. She's just like, oh, well. I would have been like, explain. Use your words. Pele tells Christian about it being Danny's birthday and how he forgot. Christian tries to make up for it in a very symbolic sense by lighting a candle on top of a piece of cake that just won't light, like their relationship, you know. Symbolic. That night, Pele tells everyone that there's going to be a special ceremony taking place in the morning, and he calls it by its like traditional name, and the only person that really knows what that is Josh. And Josh is an asshole. Instead of letting everybody know what the they're about to witness tomorrow, he's just like, what? A real one? Bitch ass nigga. That's all I'm gonna say. Because the traditional ceremony is that two 72-year-old people in the community are gonna get on top of a giant rock and jump off in a ceremonial suicide in front of everybody. And you really thought to bring the bitch that just lost 3 family members in a double murder suicide to this shit was a good idea, stupid asshole. And then if they don't die, they hit him in the face with a giant cartoonishly large whack-a-mole mallet. Side note, special effects go crazy. That was foul and disgusting. Just this muted splat. So of course, again, the already traumatized tailspin driven girl is like going through another one. Even if she wasn't traumatized already, this would have done it, you know? Meanwhile, Christian proves that he's still the worst. This time in a different way, because he goes up to Josh and basically says that he is going to take his idea for his thesis. Like, it's just what's gonna happen. If you want to do it together, we can, but I am going to take your idea, black man. Oh my god, I can never imagine the concept of like a white entitled cishet man going up to a black dude and being like, your idea? It's our idea now. Are you down for that? Meanwhile, Pele goes to console Danny, who is just like, that's it, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get the f out of here. The way that he like cajoles her down is so triggering and so uncomfortable, because he offers her a hallucinogen to calm her down. When she refuses it, he goes straight into like, I understand what you're feeling right now. I lost my parents too. I lost my parents in a fire. But I was never allowed to feel alone because I had this community that embraced me. You deserve a real family. Christian, what is it that he said? Do you feel held by him? Does he feel like home to you? Game. Later, Christian and Danny talk, and he's like, yeah, I'm disturbed by the whole like ceremonial suicide thing, but I'm trying to keep an open mind. I'm trying to figure out like what I want to keep and what I want to cut, because there's just a lot visually going on in this movie. Again, if you've never seen it, I highly recommend watching it, but I'm gonna skip a few things in order to just keep this video concise. So the next morning, the dumb one, he pisses on the ancestral tree and offends the whole village. So I was like, yeah, he gonna die. The Indian girl and the black dude, they were the loudest to contest the ceremonial suicide after it happened, and they said, this is some bullshit, I want to go. So I knew they was gonna die. Maya puts her pubes in Christian's pie, not a euphemism. I don't even know how we could turn that into one. And blood, and her blood in his drink. So again, happy to know that foreshadowing wasn't lost. Josh disobeys the rules of the commune by going into their ancestral house and reading their like divine oracles writings, and wants to take pictures of them to show in his thesis. And I was like, well, he gonna die. And slowly but surely everybody just kind of goes missing, but they're so high all the time that there's no real time to really internalize that information. They get high again, this time on more tea as the games begin. Danny participates in the games. She's been slowly participating more in the village, working in the kitchen, working, you know, here and there. And so now she's like fully participating in an activity. They dance in a circle while high on tea until each person falls from being dizzy and is knocked out, and whoever stays the longest wins and becomes this year's May Queen. Meanwhile though, one of the participants that lost earlier, the girl that had a crush on Christian, has officially scouted Christian for breeding. All sex that takes place on the commune has to be approved by elders, and they present to him that they would like him to impregnate Maya. Now, as disturbing as that is, if you watch the director's cut, it's even more so. He does not explicitly agree as far as we see, and then he goes out to watch them spinning while they were still playing the game. Eventually, the only person left in the game is Danny, and she is officially crowned the May Queen. And this is one of the final nails of the coffin of Danny being indoctrinated into the commune. They dote on her, they crown her, and the more they kind of lift her up and encapsulate her in this love and affection of the villagers, she becomes more physically and emotionally distant from Christian. Her duty as May Queen is to bless crops, and so she is separated again from Christian in that moment. Meanwhile, a very, very high Christian is taken to a shed where he is led to have sex with Maya as a semicircle of naked, chanting older women hum and moan in unison with them. The chanting go crazy though. Someone needs to sample that and make a song that I'm very, very conflicted about. There's a lot to unpack with this scene, and I'm deciding if I want to do that here or if I want to do that later. I'll do that later. Danny sees them having sex and begins hyperventilating and crying, and like a swarm of bees, these women of the Harga crowd around her and swarm her and turn her cries that she's had at this point up in solitude, turns those cries and that pain into a communal activity. Now, I understand for someone who's lonely and is always crying alone, that might be really beneficial for them. This would have me throwing hands. The very concept of being just swarmed by a bunch of bitches mimicking me as I'm crying, I will f y'all up. But for Danny, this is great. This is her being able to like grieve with people. And that's the final straw, baby. She's in there. And so effectively, both Christian and Danny are no longer themselves. Now, both Christian and Danny are placed in a situation where neither of their feelings of any sort, pleasure, pain, can be felt singularly. They are in and of themselves communal activities. And that is something that is beautiful in the context of Danny, who is looking for this community, but it's incredibly frightening for Christian because one, he was high as you know, in this epic post-nut clarity, he's just horrified and terrified by what had just happened. He seems to have sobered up a bit, and he runs out butt naked into the field. That is where he discovers that Josh has been killed. He finds the other black dude still technically alive, but filleted open through his back so that his lungs, still breathing, are exposed. Eventually, Christian is knocked out by some of the villagers and ultimately paralyzed. And in the final activity of the Harga Midsummer Festival, it is now time for the May Queen to make a very important decision. There must be 9 sacrifices for this festival. 4 will be locals. 4 will be outsiders. So now the final decision of who will be that 9th person is left up to the main queen. Will it be Christian or another villager that she doesn't know? And guess who she chooses? So it's time for the ritual to take place. I don't know why they do this. We never get really any specificity on this, but they stuff Christian's paralyzed but still conscious body inside of the skin of a dead bear. They sew him up inside of it, place him inside of this like big ceremonial yellow house that they've been showing throughout the movie, put all of the locals, put all of the dead outsiders, and then set the whole thing on fire. As it burns, Danny and the Horga pantomime the screams of agony that undoubtedly the living men inside were making, and in the final just fantastic swelling crescendo, Danny stares upon the flames, knowing well that the remains of her boyfriend are inside, and with that knowledge, she smiles. And that is the end of the movie. Now, I know that that's a very, very, very watered down account of this movie. Again, it's something that you're gonna have to watch in person, and you're probably gonna have to watch a few times if you've never seen it. And I still have so much to say, but in an effort to not make this video 8 million years long, because I don't wanna edit that, I'm just gonna talk about 3 things. 1, Christian is awful, but he did not deserve to go out like that. And I stand by that. I think it's fair to say that ultimately, he is in many ways the antagonist of this story. He is truly terrible in a lot of ways, but there are certain aspects about Christian that I can't help but begrudgingly find sympathetic. And before you start going like, oh Kendall, really? Are you gonna like Songwoo this? And it's like, no, I don't feel as understanding about Christian. He's truly terrible. He's trash to Josh, which is more important to another point I want to make, and I'll talk about that later. He's trash to Danny, but in how he's trash to Danny, kind of get it, like to some degree, in the sense that I don't condone his like emotionally abusive behavior, the gaslighting, all that shit. But kind of what I said earlier, in that he's in a situation where he is the bad guy no matter what he really does. I had to ask myself, Kendall, if you were dating somebody and you wanted to stop dating them and then their whole family dies in such a incredible tragedy, what would you do? And they're going through all that trauma, and it's like, I'm not a professional. I don't have the faculties for that. And also I was already mentally checked out, so I think it's more abusive to stay. But then they're so fragile. What if me leaving is the final straw? Is that a bit narcissistic to believe that you leaving would be? You know what I mean? I don't know what the answer to that is what I'm saying. Whatever you kind of do is kind of a dick move. And so he's just kind of floundering, and his floundering ends up hurting Danny more and makes him more of the enemy, which is ultimately brought to this like catalyst when he cheats on her. And can we talk about that real quick? In Danny's eyes, Christian having sex with Maya was a betrayal because of the viewpoint and the context that she saw the act in. But Christian was drugged and lured into a mating ritual. So he was raped. The mating ritual is Christian's sexual assault scene. And I understand to some degree if people don't internalize it like that, because that's the thing that's so elusive about the scene. It's so frightening, it's so disturbing and so scary, because what it does is ultimately beautifies the act of sexual assault. It disorients the act of sexual assault. It is single-handedly one of the most disturbing scenes I've ever seen in my life. Again, Christian is not perfect. He is a gaslighting asshole to his friends, to his girlfriend, to everybody. He is awful, especially in the director's cut, because there's more of their like arguments, him and Danny, and he's just even worse. But does he deserve to be lit on fire? Especially if it's because of his cheating, quote unquote. To call him a cheater again completely nullifies the realization that he was sexually assaulted by the Harga. And then outside of it, it also takes away that the Harga is very manipulative. To understand Danny's final decision as if it's something that she made in the most clear of mindsets without no interference from the Harga, that ultimately it's the result of her own righteous anger exerting her personhood and her identity, when actually it's only the result of the machinations of the Harga. I find very fascinating that a lot of people kind of understand it as this like power move for her, and very alarming even. Like, she is not more of her own person now. She did not discover herself in the Harga. All she's done is left one codependent relationship and gone to another one. She just simply doesn't need to be codependent with Christian anymore. She found a way to be codependent with a group of people now, which leads to my next gripe with how people like to talk about this movie. One of the things that disturbed me most when I first watched this movie and wanted to learn more about how people felt about this movie is that there is a sizable amount of people that for some reason think of Danny's indoctrination as her new idealized lease on life. She's her own person now, you know, she burned her ex alive. Girl boss shit. And it's like, bitch, she in a cult. She is not the maker of her own destiny. Like, what the fuck is wrong with y'all? I truly can't really wrap my head around how a lot of people watched this movie, saw that ending and thought, yay, she found a family. I saw a lot of people who were kind of talking about how enticing the Harga was, how idyllic and simple it was, how enticing the idea of no longer being an individual was, how her personhood is now collective. Her pain, regardless of how present it is, can be pantomimed back to her as if showing quote unquote understanding and oneness. How enticing it is to be given an identity when you don't have the strength or the ability to exert your own. You know, what a cult does. And I do think a lot of people are enticed by the idea of the simplicity of something like the Harga. Things like roles, how time is spent, what time means, what appearances are most appropriate are all ritualized and routinized as to keep tradition and order. Everything and everyone has a place, distinct rules on what is and what isn't acceptable, and what should be done when those things are transgressed, if ever. But again, what I find so fascinating is that people are able to watch this movie and get that from the Harga, and not like the fact that a bunch of people came here and they all dead now. We're like, oh my god, it'd be so nice to like bake with everybody. Oh my god, look at the pretty flowers, look at the dress, everybody's so dressed up. Let's just completely ignore the Harga is particularly preying on Danny's vulnerabilities. They're keeping her high for like 40% of the movie. They prey on her need for belonging and family. They noticed her isolation. They notice her weaknesses and her ability to be coerced, you know, again, what cults do. And also, let's be mindful that we don't really know what happens to the May Queen after the movie ends. I find it interesting that no former May Queens like came up to her and really talked to her about that, as far as I'm aware. Are they still alive? We don't know. We don't know anything that's gonna happen now that Danny has been fully indoctrinated. But so many people are so enticed by the beauty of the Harga. Like, how did you miss 2.5 hours of people dying? And I guess it comes off as if I'm like blaming the audience, and to some degree, not blaming the audience, more so just noting where a lot of attention seems to go. It's also indicative of the skill of Ari Aster. He was able to divert attention in that way, and I think that shows how great of a director he is. The thing that frustrates me is how that leads into my final point, because if a whole group of people are very, very willing to ignore the death of so many people because of the beauty of the Harga, I can't help but feel a little, well, maybe I am kind of blaming the audience, because there is a part of me that feels particularly judgmental about the people that are so inclined and so desiring to join the commune. I don't know if people just completely missed all of the very, very strong white supremacist imagery in this movie. Because to me, it comes off as if like, oh yeah, I'd definitely join the Aryan Brotherhood. I'd be into it. Like, yeah, depending on how you felt about this movie by the end of it, I will judge you, like, as a person. I can't help but do it. If you do ultimately think of this movie as a happy, yay, she found herself ending, you're either A, actively ignoring the very blaringly strong white supremacist imagery that's happening here and referencing that's happening here, or you simply don't realize they are there, both of which is frightening to me. One would hope that most people just didn't make the connection, but I have no hope in humanity, so I'm gonna assume that, you know, as a rule of thumb, don't hope for the best when it comes to humanity. There is a scene that they took out from the theatrical cut that's in the director's cut that I'm kind of happy they took out because it was a little too on the nose in my opinion, but maybe it was necessary. Where in the drive into the commune, Josh, the black character, is holding a book called The Secret Nazi Language of the Uthark. And basically he brought it because this commune is using similar runes. Now, why this black man thought it was a good idea to go into this suspected neo-Nazi commune, I'm just gonna chalk up to it being a movie. But what it does is clarify things that I just knew about it, like instinctually. I'm like, yeah, this is some white supremacy. And again, the people that say that they like the idea of joining the Harga tend to not recognize how racially coded that statement is. Or maybe they do. Some of them do. Some of them don't give a f. What they're seeing is this like clean, superior, simplistic, orderly, patriarchal idea of white supremacy, and they like the idea of everything being so, you know, like the good old days, which is, you know, the thing that racist people always love to say. I miss the time when there were no people of color and that women did women's work, men did men's work. Like, I don't know if it's because I'm a negress. I could not imagine someone watching this movie and thinking at the end of it, I'm just happy she found a home. And the fact that so many people, intelligent people, people whose job it is to analyze and critique film, didn't consider that they were co-signing a blatant representation of white supremacy. I'm not surprised, by the way, but I think what it did is gave me new evidence that people really do find whiteness as an idyllic default. Every non-white character is brought in as a utility, right? Someone that can be thrown away in order to do this ultimate sacrifice that they need to do. Josh is written off quite early.
I think the Saki Saints do the same thing in Braj Bhumi.
So, we are your hosts?
He's leeched off of by Christian, which is kind of indicative of how he's not really supported by either of these communities. He's disavowed so strongly by Christian, even though they were friends at one point. And every person of color is kind of discarded and sent by the wayside. The community is sustained partially by inbreeding for their oracle, is sustained by bringing in white men. Both white men of the in group are considered, but one is a bumbling idiot, so of course he gets killed. The elders say things like the bloodlines are very well preserved. So yes, if you've watched this movie and said, I'd join, I am judging you. But now that the sun has risen, I've been talking for a very long time. I'm gonna end this video because I could, again, go on forever. I have so many things. I didn't even touch on visuals. I didn't even touch on like little like Easter egg stuff, which I love, and I'm not going to. I think I'm gonna end the series, the mini series, the two-parter here. But I love talking about this movie and I could do it forever. But as far as the movie itself, it's amazing. It's a good movie. It's an incredible movie. If you've never seen it, highly recommend watching it. If you've seen it before and never really considered any of these other applications, I highly encourage you to see it again and maybe see some other things that maybe I didn't see and didn't talk about. But yeah, that is all for today, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Big thanks again to Likewise for sponsoring today's video. Follow me on all my social media, Instagram and Twitter, both of which are KennieJD. And I will see you guys next time.